Nicky Rod was able to break Gordon Ryan's foot, and the match ended with Gordon tapping. And these two clips are what made the headlines after the match. So on the surface, it seems a little strange that Gordon ended up winning. But in this video, we're going to dive into the jiu-jitsu and see what we can take away from this match. And if it's your first time here, just be aware that I've been called a Gordon Ryan stan on multiple occasions. But I also study the B team quite a bit, and I have to figure out a way to give my man Owen a shout out. And I know a lot of you loyal subscribers have been waiting for this video, so let's get into it. Now the match started off and it felt like Nicky was really coming forward looking for that body lock pass. Especially when Gordon would come up to his elbow, Nicky would really try to initiate that body lock. And Gordon would fall back down to his shoulder, taking a 2-on-1 grip to respect that near arm. And it looked clear from the beginning that Nicky Rod was out there trying to play his game.
Came out and treated Gordon really like any other opponent.
Now Gordon has talked about previously how it's difficult to make people engage if you're playing butterfly half guard. But if you're playing with a knee shield, it's more difficult for people to disengage. So you can see Gordon playing with a knee shield initially, making it difficult for Nicky to back away. Then Gordon uses a strong overhook, which also makes it difficult for Nicky to disengage. And now that his arm has taken over that responsibility, he relinquishes his knee shield and switches to a butterfly hook. Now Nicky ends up pulling away anyway, but this order of operations I think is one thing that makes Gordon such a technical grappler, and it's something that we're going to come back to later in the video. So the match continues on and Gordon pushes Nicky away with his feet, and as Nicky re-engages, it's no secret where his hand is going. And Gordon is waiting to make a connection with that arm, and he goes right into a yoko sumi gaeshi that results in him ending up in closed guard with a great angle. Now for a normal sumi gaeshi or butterfly sweep, your right foot is going to elevate them to your left. But for a yoko sumi gaeshi, your right foot elevates them to your right. It's something that the New Wave team does quite a bit, and just like anything else, it works sometimes and not others. Now, what's interesting about this yoko sumi gaeshi is that it's going to be difficult to sweep anybody, especially Nicky, because there's nothing stopping their hand from posting on the mat. So if your opponent's able to see it coming, they can post their hand on the mat, make it difficult for you to grab their leg as they knee cut to that side. But Gordon had tried so many normal sumi gaeshis, I think this yoko kind of caught Nicky a bit off guard. And Gordon was able to use it to get a hold of Nicky's leg. But Nicky did a good job of preventing the wrestle up and forcing Gordon to accept a closed guard. And eventually Nicky was able to reset by defending Gordon's armbar attempt. But following that sequence, Nicky became a bit more cagey. But I agree with Craig here. He was just sticking with his game plan and trying to look for that body lock pass.
And he was able to maintain sort of this distance where he was, some people might look at it and think it's stalling, but he was looking for openings. He's on top, sticking to his A game, looking for the body lock pass.
And he does a great job of pummeling his arm inside the knee shield of Gordon Ryan. But again, Gordon does things in the perfect order, which allows him to not only recover, but to threaten follow-up attacks. And I started to think about this idea of order of operations quite a bit after I heard Owen O'Flanagan talk about Giancarlo's application of the corkscrew toe hold, where basically Owen said it's normally a move, but Giancarlo first put his foot on Owen's bottom leg. Then he built height and put his chest over Owen's foot. Then he took the initial grip and brought his chest even closer. So by the time he locked it up, Owen didn't have much time to defend, and Giancarlo was stepping on his bottom leg, making it difficult for Owen to build height. So on the biggest stage in front of 13,000 people, Owen is forced to tap to a move because of the order of operations. So bringing this back to the match between Gordon and Nicky Rod. The top player is often going to try and knock your hand and elbow past your rib cage because they're trying to get an underhook. And to prevent that, the bottom player is going to want to keep their elbow in line with their rib cage. So often when you're grip fighting, it's a good idea to maybe take a collar tie, and as your opponent clears the collar tie, you grab their arm with your bottom hand. So now when you bring your own elbow behind your rib cage, you're controlling their hand so they can't shoot in for an underhook, and you're able to take your 2-on-1 grip. So Nicky's able to successfully pummel inside the knee shield of Gordon. And what Nicky would like is for Gordon to take his top arm out and try to win back that battle. And Gordon gets away with it in this scenario because he has a frame with his lower body, which prevents Nicky from exploiting that space and shooting in for an underhook. But if Gordon does not have a frame with his lower body, he has to be super disciplined with his elbow position. And you can see he first brings his foot to the top of Nicky's thigh, which prevents Nicky from coming towards him. So he reestablishes a lower body frame before he takes his hand out to address Nicky's hand position. And as he shoves Nicky's hand down, Gordon pummels in his butterfly hook as well as 2 underhooks and goes right on the attack. Back to the match, and we continue on with Gordon using a high knee shield to come up to an underhook. But now there's a huge space for Nicky to punch underneath Gordon's body and lock his hands. And Gordon just kind of hugs Nicky, which kind of surprised me because I was expecting a very, technical response from Gordon, but he just hugs him. But I think the reason is that this is still level 1 Gordon, and he hasn't really started ramping it up. Both him and Nicky know that if the bottom player has a butterfly hook and an underhook on opposite sides, it makes for a much more difficult body lock pass.
It's on the wrong side though. Galvan has an underhook on the left arm, so if he passes to the right, that's gonna help his underhook.
So I think Gordon's not too worried, and Nicky ends up bailing and resetting. But now is where I think we start to see Gordon implement his primary strategy, where he's playing butterfly half guard and takes that arm drag grip all the way up on the rash guard of Nicky to make it much more difficult for Nicky to slip out. And as he's trying to disengage, Gordon is using it to heist up and wrestle. But again, Nicky does a really good job at preventing Gordon from getting on top. I think this was Gordon's primary strategy because we saw throughout the match he was putting his foot on Nicky's hip, making it impossible for Nicky to use a body lock pass. And because Gordon has a lower body frame in place, it gives him the freedom to sit up and take a collar tie. So now because Nicky doesn't want Gordon to snap him down, it forces Nicky to come off his knees and abandon his strategy for a short period of time. Now, one of Nicky's biggest strengths is his ability to change pace very quickly. We often see him employ strategies where he lulls his opponent to sleep a bit before exploding. He believes in this ability so much that he'll even lay down on the mat just to get you to take your back off the mat. And I think a very similar play caught Gordon off guard, where Nicky starts to stand and Gordon sits up with him, but as he does, Nicky changes direction very quickly, shoots in on a body lock, and locks his hands. But Gordon is able to recover to a closed guard. Nicky stands and escapes before very aggressively coming forward and shooting in on another body lock pass. But Gordon has his foot on Nicky's leg, which shuts down the entry enough for Gordon to get his butterfly hook in. And now that he has a butterfly hook, Gordon tries a sumi gaeshi to the other side. But it failed, resulting in Nicky getting a very good starting position to initiate his body lock pass. But the Darth Vader grip shut it down pretty quickly and Gordon was able to escape. Now we find ourselves with Gordon trying to pummel in a butterfly hook but ends up settling for a knee shield. The camera angle kind of sucks here, but I imagine it's very similar to the sequence that ended their match in ADCC. And during ADCC, you can see Gordon threatening that far side arm drag. And Nicky's head is kind of high up and he's using his other hand to push off of Gordon, which makes it difficult for Gordon to get underneath Nicky. But it also leaves Nicky's near leg vulnerable, which Gordon ended up attacking. This time, Nicky's head is much lower and towards the top shoulder of Gordon, and his hand is over Gordon's back. So if Gordon can get his shoulder to the other side of Nicky's head, he's going to start to get access to Nicky's other leg. So Nicky starts to sprawl heavy, and he has an underhook on that near side. So if it were me, I probably would have given up. But Gordon uses his underhook and brings his knees to his chest, which forces Nicky to bring his knee in for base and take out his underhook. So now Gordon finds himself entering into the legs once again on Nicky, but this time instead of the near leg like in ADCC, it's the far leg. But what happened next really confused me, because I've always thought of Gordon as someone who avoided 50-50 leg entanglements and transferred to outside ashi to attack. But in his match with Nicky Rod, he used 50-50, and by now we all know how that turned out. So it did kind of shock me that he used 50-50, but in part 2 of this video, I'm going to give you my best guess as to why I think he did. And I'm sorry to have to break this video up, but it's going to be way too long if I try and put all of this match into one video. But I live for this stuff, and I really didn't want to cut any corners. Gordon's next match is against Felipe Pena, and if you're interested in my thoughts and predictions on that match, download the free PDF down below. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss part 2. Leave a fist bump in the comments section to support the channel, and we'll see you next week.